Good evening. I'm Greer McGeary, President of Seahorse Victoria. My guest tonight is Meghan Kelly, a co-convenor of Transfamily. Welcome.
Thank you.
Before we get into what Transfamily is about, what was the circumstances arising to you even considering?
It's always an interesting story how we end up in certain locations, but I have three wonderful children, and my youngest child identifies as a woman. She came out to us 2 weeks before her Year 12 English exam, and we didn't have any idea that she was in that transitioning period herself. So she had identified as a woman for quite some period of time but hadn't communicated to us. So we were quite happily moving along with three children to then find out, two girls and a boy, to then find out we have three daughters. So when she came out to us, it was a very big learning curve for us because we didn't see it coming. And she was ahead of us in the game because she had thought quite some time about transitioning and living in her true gender. And we just seemed to be doing a catch-up to try and understand the hormone treatments, where her ambitions were to go, how far she wanted to transition, and we needed help to do that. So at that time, we were looking around for where we could get some support and found it quite limiting until we found Transfamily.
Not really being aware of that right until towards the end of secondary schooling. Was there any sort of indication in the younger day?
No, interestingly not. And she was really proud of that. What we found astonishing, she said, "You didn't have any idea." And I said, "No, but why didn't you tell us?" I actually felt quite hurt because I don't have a problem that she identifies as a woman, but I thought we could work together to do that. And she said, "No, I was working it out." So for her, she did that in the privacy of her own life, so to speak. But I've thought we could share in that journey a little bit more. Did not see it coming. She had collected a wardrobe of women's clothes, and as a mother with growing teens, you don't really want to go into their room and go, "Can we clean it up so I can get the clothes in and out?" So the deal was very simple for us, that you throw your clothes out if you want them washed, and I'll pop them in a basket at your door to go back in there, but what's going on in there is all yours. And that meant that I didn't know there was this wardrobe evolving of clothes that I hadn't seen. As soon as she told me, the first thing I wanted to do was wash them all, because I felt as though she'd been building this wardrobe of clothes, but we'd never really, and she's been wearing them, but we'd never really washed them, cleaned them. And she was quite conscious and said, "But then everybody will know." And I said, "You're in a house of women. You've got two older sisters and myself. Your father's fine. We'll just wash them all and then you can start to wear them." But it was not knowing, I think, that brought a little bit of pain, but also trying to understand what her personal journey was.
I know just from my own experience, I was the middle of five brothers, and I've sort of got some indication that something was different in my life from being a toddler and through teenage years. Of course, full adult height at 16, so I was quite big. And yeah, like I became very adept at sort of trying not to give away, but I also loved that aspect of my physical size, providing that sense of physical strength and stuff like that. But it's all through the teenage years, like I'd like to be wearing that, but not in a position to even sneak it into the house because Mum was the only woman in the house, and at 5'3" and everyone towering above her, it's sort of a bit hard to hide that sort of thing.
And it is tricky, I think, to learn to be in the agenda that you align with. I think there's a learning curve. We did have a few learning issues, such as when you're wearing a short skirt and you're unpacking a dishwasher, you've got to squat slightly differently than bending over, or you can't wear that dress on a windy day, darling, because it will fly above your ears. And there was a few things that you naturally teach daughters as they grow up that we then went back to teach her about. But I think that the saddest thing was I didn't know whether it was a point of her not confident to tell us or her working through it herself. And I don't know whether we've ever really identified that or articulated that either way between her and myself, because I think it's a combination of both. She was learning herself. So she didn't know what she was communicating. And for me, I was saying, we can do whatever you want, but I didn't know this one was coming. So we had, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it, really? But we did have some small signs. She hated sport. She hated sport because I think she hated the change rooms. And so she did anything she could to get out of all sports. And we knew that was going to happen. So on a day that we were going to school sports, we were always testing to think, will it be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour? How long is it going to take until she gets herself out of it? But we knew that, and we just thought that was a personality trait, and that was fine. I didn't realise there was something more underpinning to those decisions of not wanting to include herself in sport.
One of the things I suppose in trying to learn about hindsight, I sort of along that line of sort of people working things out themselves, but when our oldest son went off to a holiday with my now late brother, my brother rings up and says, "Oh, you've got problems," and sort of my son had just gone off to have a holiday, but it made us reflect on how we're bringing them up, and we decided in the end we just wanted independent, responsible adults as opposed to doctors, lawyers, or whatever. And so that sort of was a little bit of that hindsight coming into it, saying, well, what are we trying to achieve? What I was sort of thinking of as you were saying that was that sometimes, before we get into going what Transfamily does, but having worked out some of the hindsight reasoning behind what was happening helps with future advice to others.
We have a lot of stories through Transfamily of where parents and loved ones didn't see it coming. And I think that it's no retrospective relationship issues. It's just that everybody's learning on their journey themselves. So, for instance, I'll give another example that my daughter, at the age of about 6 or 7, said, if I was a girl, what were you going to name me? And I said, oh, we didn't really have a name. I think we came up with one, and I told her what it was. So when she came out to me at 18, she said, this is my name. And it surprised me because this was 10 years later she'd hung on to that information. So she identified and she had thought about it way before she knew how to articulate it to me or our family. And even when she did, she needed to know she was confident to do that because she knew that it would be a period of disruption. And we're a great solid unit, but that disruption she didn't want to cause. So even though you think you've got it all clear, open, transparent communication with your loved ones, it doesn't mean that they're going to be confident in coming out to say things. And sometimes the signs aren't really there. They just aren't clear.
Well, I know I would never have spoken to my parents about this,
So, yeah.
even though they probably wouldn't understand it. Not that I understood it at the time either.
I think that's the point, that I don't think anybody really understands it. It's just a journey you've got to go through, and it evolves. And that's really hard to articulate, I think, to say, well, I'm on this path now and I need to learn about it myself.
Your daughter's just about to finish school and go off into the bigger, wider world, and you've just become aware of it.
Yes.
So what was the initial sort of support or help that you saw?
So she was a very independent girl. She still is. And she said, I'm going to university, but I'm going to stay at college. Even though the university has multiple campuses and she could have lived at home, she chose to go to a campus further away. She wanted to live her life. And that wasn't quite as successful as she thought it might be. She found it very disruptive and quite challenging, because for her, she was able to grow a beard in 3 days, but she really liked to wear the dresses. And she found that balance was very noticeable to people and wasn't really feeling safe in that college environment. So she said to us, I need to get out of here. I can't stay here. And we said, okay, we need a little bit of time and we'll work out accommodation. And she said, no, that's not happening fast enough. So she got everybody into her room to smoke dope so she could get kicked out of college and say, see, we've got to move faster, which I thought was quite clever, really. I think, all right, we're not listening to you, obviously. Yeah. So then we got a safe environment for her to live in. And she said, I'm starting hormone treatments, testosterone blockers and estrogen. And again, it was kind of happening quite quickly and away from us. So we weren't really aware of how her mental health was going. The testosterone blocker she went on was quite a harsh one and did impact on her mental health. It gave her quite poor depression. And the estrogen was not counterbalancing that. So she sort of went into menopause as a 19-year-old woman. And it was very challenging then that she was away, and it was like the frog in the pond, you know, that it sort of, she didn't see it coming, and we weren't there to watch this change. And once we were seeing her more regularly, I said, you're not doing well. And she'd go, I'm fine. I just need the estrogen. I'm fine. So she would see counsellors and psychologists and manipulate that system, get what she needed, but it was never quite right and never quite enough. So we did have a period of suicide attempts, and we did have a period where we had to take her off the testosterone and put her on a different testosterone blocker. She was on to 4 times the estrogen. And incredibly, I felt like my child came back. She was amazing. But that took about a 3 or 4 year period. And that's where Transfamily really came in to help, because I was saying, this isn't normal, is it? Is your child doing this? You know, and we could have discussions about the lived experience of other loved ones.
So before you get to Transfamily, though, what sort of help were you getting?
When we would walk into any counselling meetings, and I would even walk in with my daughter, they would say, are you here because you want your child not to transition? And I'd say, no, I'm happy she's transitioning, but she's not doing well and she's not my child like this. This is not my child. And I didn't know how to articulate to them that her vibrant, effervescent, beautiful personality had been lost in this transitioning period. And they were all saying, I'm sure you're here because you want your son back. And I would just sit there going, I didn't even think that's what you might think. That's not what I'm saying. But because I didn't have a medical background, I couldn't say at that point, I think her hormones are imbalanced.
Those counsellors weren't really trans aware?
We went to what were defined 5 or 6 years ago as trans aware counsellors, and we were still having trouble. So they'd say, tell us about your experiences, you know, and I'd be just as frank as I am with you, Greer. I'd explain it, and they'd say, oh, we didn't know that's what kind of happened. So it was training counsellors as much as trying to support my child, as much as trying to learn to articulate where we were at.
So you get finally ring up Transfamily.
When we finally rang up Transfamily, the joy was we found trans-friendly, more understanding psychologists, support systems, endocrinologists. Everybody knew who to go to and who had not satisfied the needs that they needed to. And the pool was really small, so we were all knocking on the same doors to say, please help us. Then we would get those people into Transfamily, and we would start to teach them about our experiences as well. But again, the pool stayed quite small as we all networked together. So Transfamily it normalised our journey as much as the journey of our loved ones, because we needed to know, did yours do this, or did this happen to you? And who did you see when that happened? And suddenly we all went, oh, it did. It happened to you as well. What did you do? And it could be that you've got a hormone imbalance, or it could be that they were seeking surgery and trying to find it online, and we wanted to know that that was a reputable place to go. It could be anything. My daughter came out now 8 years ago, and in that 3 to 4 year period, it was just having that network of people that we could talk to, because my daughter would come to me and say, I'm going to do this now. And I go, I love that. That's fine. Have you checked? Have you checked that that's the right one? Are there any other options? Can we think about something else? And it's not to prevent her in her journey. It's to surround her with the love and care that you would with anyone who's going through such a significant change in their life.
Yes, it's important. Unfortunately, I've seen the other side of, not within the family, but definitely from other people, where the lack of support really is detrimental.
Very detrimental. Yeah, very detrimental. And we have at Transfamily family members that have identified in not their birth gender and in their other gender, but haven't moved that beyond just the immediate family, and nobody quite knows how to deal with it. And they can stay in that position for years if they choose to, and that's an acceptable path as well. So all of these nuances in that spectrum of gender diversity do become really difficult for people that When they're born, you say it's a girl or a boy. And then there's the grey area that you've got to navigate, and it seems to move and transition and change as people move through that.
That variation and staying within certain boundaries as a choice is important. I know of a person who was in Seahorse long before I was, but they'd recounted a story of that in their mid-30s that they were, really on the point of suicidal thoughts and things like that, and finally found a place that they could go to start expressing. I think mentioned that it really was a lifesaver to have that sort of support, but ultimately was able to balance their life so that within the immediate family knew and was able to every so often go out and dressed and go to concerts and all those sorts of things. But the broader family weren't aware of it, but it made the difference to their both physical and mental health.
But I still think there's a learning curve for everyone, including my daughter, because as I said, she had to learn to present as a woman the way she wanted to present as a woman. And it took her time to figure that out and practice it, I think, and trial and go out and then say, oh, but that happens, I think, that's what your teen years are for. Everybody goes out and says, actually, that's not my tribe. I'm not feeling comfortable here. And they come home and go, I'm not going out with those people again. Try another tribe. And she had the same journey, but also during that time, she was transitioning. So it's a big journey.
In the time that I've been in Seahorse and talking to people, we talk about that, particularly when you come out later in life, you're sort of, in a sense, going back to your teenage years now, whether you go on the hormones or dressing comfortably, but you've got to learn your style, what suits you. I recount several times a story of when I first went to Seahorse. I was working up in country Victoria, 4.5 hour drive to Melbourne, and
it's tough.
And I was in what I call my Edith Piaf look. I was dressed in all black, except I was about probably 5 times her size. But as I walked around from the car park to the venue at the time and looked through the glass panel door, and I thought, there's people in there as badly dressed as I am. And in many ways, it's comforting because it's sort of saying, oh, yes, this is a safe place to start learning about not only this side of your life, but how do I make it work for me?
And I think that's the period of time when my daughter didn't tell us, was her working it out. So at that point, she had a girlfriend and they would go to try on clothes. And it was it's a very acceptable thing that the girlfriend would grab a dress and she would grab a different size. They'd both go into a change room and she could try on that dress, figure out her body shape, see what fit and didn't fit. The other interesting part is over this 8-year journey, her body shape, like all women, has changed. Her development from an A cup, B cup, C cup was over a 6-month period. And that changed then what she could or couldn't wear. So that transition meant she needed to think about, well, does that dress fit me anymore? Do I need to think about a different style cut? It's faster. It was a faster transition period than women who go through puberty. We have the same body. It slowly changes over a few years, changes if you have children, changes when you hit menopause. But for her, it was this 2 or 3 year, very rapid fire change of body that she had to learn to work with.
Within Transfamily, as somebody who's come to seek support, what have you sort of learnt about the organisation and what it can do?
So Transfamily normalises things. I think that's the really key part, that we all sit there and nod at each other and go, yep, that's pretty normal. And normalising means that you don't feel as though you're isolated in this journey you don't understand. You also can get a little bit of a vision about what might be happening in the future, because in a lot of instances, you can't see what's coming around the corner, and then your loved one says, by the way, I'd like to have surgery and I've booked in for March. And you go, okay, how did that happen? And what do you need from us? And does that mean, what does this mean? So this says get ready for it, start thinking about it, and when your loved one's ready, they'll tell you, and then at least you've got your head around what might be coming your way.
With that sort of normalising it within, like your immediate family, how has that helped with the extended family?
So it's quite interesting. My experiences where I was in the supermarket shopping happily with my supermarket trolley, and when you stop and you're thinking about the item you're going to purchase, over the next aisle, I heard people talking about my daughter. Did you hear about the boy who now wants to be a girl, which is incorrect in itself?
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm not having this. Me and my supermarket trolley went around and rammed into them and said, you'd be talking about my child. If you want to talk about it openly. Don't gossip in the supermarket. What do you need to know? And that changed. You become an advocate for trans and gender diversity. You become an advocate through your family and your family network. You have to educate. On behalf of your child, you're educating a lot of people around you to make it safe for them to be who they are and at what stage they are in their journey. So you're informing grandparents, siblings, aunts and uncles, cousins. So you say, when my child arrives, they're going to look a little bit different to what you saw last time. You're working with that, because if you don't, you're actually going to trigger her mental health, and it's not safe for anybody. So here's the deal. Ask me the questions first, and when she's good, we're all good. We start to think about how we can approach our other family members, and Transfamily we have a book of stories of loved ones, Transfamily, which is the stories from people who have attended. And in the back of the book is ways to also start talking to loved ones about that. And it's a really great book of people's own journey and stories from the standpoint of grandparents, siblings, brothers and sisters, or aunts and uncles. But it also has some information in the back to say, if you're going out to talk to people, here's some ways that you can do it. If you need to advise your family, here's some words you can use.
Because that's important. That's one of the things that through Seahorse, where somebody new comes along and say, look, talk to people about different ways that you can out yourself, because you're the only one that's allowed to out yourself, really. Pieces of advice about how to, as you say, talking to family or to siblings or in-laws or others. And I know, because I'm the reverse of where you're at, is that I outed myself to my kids. Fortunately, they were all adult at the time. One of the things when I outed myself to siblings and in-laws was to say, turned up in dad and grandpa mode sort of thing, and said, well, this is what's happening, bit of the relationship issues. I'm doing certain things. Until all that changes, I'll just turn up to the family functions in jeans and a shirt sort of thing, and I won't mention it again until the world changes, but otherwise I'm always open to questions. So, and that was sort of based on my sort of thing about people who are, say, hypochondriacs and always telling people about their issue, and after a while people get sick of it. And so one of the things was to say, well, I'm just another human being. That's why I went and sort of did things outside social support. Turn up, don't explain myself. I'm here to do the same thing as everyone else.
And it's really interesting, because we hear a lot of stories about loved ones that say, I've told you, I don't care about anybody telling anybody else. You can do it if you want. And, there's an extended family that we don't see often, for instance, but they knew my daughter as my son. And I wanted her to be able to walk into a safe environment already, so it's not a thing. Let's just move on. And also they're pretty behind. I might only see them once a year, and we've moved on from all of that conversation. And we do have a lot of stories at Transfamily about people that need help to do the extended family, because it actually becomes their responsibility to do it on behalf of their loved one, who said, I'm not doing that. You can do it. I'm good who I am. I was actually quite proud of her. She went, I'm good. I don't care.
Well,
and I went, all right.
Sort of demonstrating that she's got through that period of change in the mental health process.
Yes.
Now, you've sort of got into Transfamily, and we just spoke briefly about the books there and the stories. You've committed yourself to be in the leadership team, as it were?
Yes, correct. Yeah, co-convenor of Transfamily. So I've been a co-convenor now for about 6 years. And part of the reason we're here is we're celebrating our 10th birthday of Transfamily. It's been going for a wonderful 10 years. And actually, it's interesting, we were reflecting recently on the changes of gender diversity, recognition and understanding over the last 10 years. We've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go.
What sort of future do you see for a group like yours?
So Transfamily's growing immensely. We would have 3 or 4 new families come in every month. But we also have families leave because they no longer need us anymore. They've normalised it in their family, gone through and are just working through whatever the issues are. They could always come back in, they step in and step out. So Transfamily has proven to be an amazingly great source of information for when you need it, and it's on tap. Once a month we meet, families come, families go, but they also make their own network and friendships and maintain those.
Through Seahorse, we talk about people come and go. It's sometimes I use the phrase, it was there for when I needed it.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I would like to leave it there for when somebody else needs it. But as we know, the world sort of changes rapidly.
Oh, it does, absolutely.
Particularly with electronic devices and social media, that it really makes it continuing a face-to-face organisation rather strenuous in some ways.
It is difficult, but also we're limited because we're all volunteers. And we do notice there's a lot of other organisations that are moving into the peer support, such as Transcend or Parents of Gender Diverse Children, and we absolutely welcome that. Maybe there's an opportunity to pool resources and think about how we can do it together in the future. But it appears to be that everybody needs to have a go in this space at the moment to help service the needs of the family members that are seeking out support like that.
We're all individuals.
Yes.
And how we perceive the needs that we have is not quite exactly how you perceive the needs that you have, and for everyone else as well. One of the wonderful things about achieving milestones, I suppose, is that it gives you time to reflect.
It does indeed.
A little bit and consider the future. So it's wonderful that you've been able to get develop so much in 10 years, and that we look forward to continue development and help for all trans people. Well, and parents of trans family and families.
The loved ones that surround them, because the greatest success of that gender diversity and transitioning is if you've got great people around you as well.
Meghan, thank you for participating in the conversation today. It's been a real pleasure to have helped witness the 10th anniversary and to meet some wonderful people there.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm Graham Aguirre. My guest has been Meghan Kelly, a co-convenor of Transfamily. Thank you for watching Ben TV.